Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, 4th of September, 2023, ZANU-PF has thrown the country of Zimbabwe into a constitutional crisis. The SADC election observation mission made it abundantly clear that the 23rd of August elections were flawed and illegal and could not possibly produce a legitimate government. This position was confirmed by the African Union Election Observer Team and all other observer teams of substance. It's not that SADC did not know this and the AU did not know this. SADC in 2013 tried their best to have those elections postponed to allow Zimbabwe to implement the democratic reforms so that the country would get away from the 2008 elections in which ZANU-PF blatantly cheated and used wanton violence to get into power. Unfortunately, both ZANU-PF and then the main opposition party at the time, MDC, ignored the warning about implementing the reforms before going into the elections. And so they went into the elections and ZANU-PF blatantly rigged those elections. SADC, I think, resigned at that point and said, we will rubber stamp whatever ZEC, the Zimbabwe Official Election Commission, whoever they declared to be the winner. And that's what they did in 2018. And they did the same thing in 2018. But this year, I believe SADC made up its mind and said, no, we can't allow this madness to continue. And so SADC election observer team decided to point out the flaws and the illegalities that were there all the time. And they made it clear that this election process could not possibly produce a legitimate government. ZANU-PF clearly didn't expect this, and so they were shocked. They tried to rope in SADC panel of elders to try to water down the SADC election observer mission report. We never heard what the panel of elders said, but it now appears that the panel of elders refused to be moved. And so ZANU-PF has decided to disregard the SADC report and go ahead and hold the swearing-in ceremony. This is what happened today, 4th of September, 2023. This is Emmerson Mnangagwa being sworn in as the president of Zimbabwe.
Emmerson Mnangagwa swear that as president of Zimbabwe, I will be faithful to Zimbabwe and will obey, uphold, and defend the Constitution and all other laws of Zimbabwe, and that I will promote whatever will advance and oppose whatever may harm Zimbabwe. That I protect and promote the rights of the people of Zimbabwe. That I will discharge my duties with all my strength, to the best of my knowledge and ability, and true to the dictates of my conscience. And that I will devote myself to the well-being of Zimbabwe and its people. So help me God.
So there it is. So help me God. What Mnangagwa has just done is drag the nation into a serious situation. The truth of the matter is the 23rd August election was flawed and illegal and could not have possibly produced a legitimate government. So now we have got an illegitimate government in Harare. And to underline this, most SADC heads of state did not show up for the swearing-in ceremony. Only 3 out of possible 15 or 16, bothered to attend this swearing-in ceremony. I think we've entered a really dangerous age, time period in our history as a country. How are we going to emerge out of this political illegitimacy back to a legitimate government? This is going to be a serious challenge and one that really needs careful thinking and sober minds. What I think is going to happen next is that SADC, if they don't start turning the screws now, they will be forced to turn the screws later on. Because SADC is finding now itself in a very unenviable position where their own election observer team said this process is flawed and illegal, and therefore they cannot produce a legitimate government. So SADC has got now to say, are we going to recognize the illegitimate government and set a bad precedent? Because if SADC's own election observer can say this election is flawed, the government of the day can ignore that, well, what is there to stop other governments doing the same in future? The AU is in a similar predicament. Their own election observers agreed with the SADC election observers that the election in Zimbabwe was flawed and illegal. So the AU leaders now must also decide whether they are going to recognize this ZANU-PF government. The immediate challenge for the people of Zimbabwe is what is the country's local opposition parties going to do. We should not forget that the opposition party, the main opposition party, led by Nelson Chamisa, Triple C, participated in these elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed and illegal. And they also knew that by participating, they are giving the process legitimacy. They nonetheless went ahead and participated out of greed. In the past, SADC and the AU have rubber-stamped the flawed election and declared them substantially free, fair, and credible, and thus granting ZANU-PF legitimacy. But this time, SADC itself and the AU have said these elections are flawed and illegal and cannot produce a legitimate government. The question then is our corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless opposition party going to cross the line that SADC and the AU have drawn in the sand and try to join this illegitimate ZANU-PF regime by accepting their seats in parliament? This is going to be the most trying thing, and we will see what the opposition are going to do. It is bad enough that the opposition have sold out the country in the past. But for them to do this will be to rub it in. Let me state it and repeat it. We in Zimbabwe, we are in this mess, in this political and economic mess, because ZANU-PF has been rigging the elections ever since the country gained its independence in 1980. But we had many golden opportunities to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The best opportunity, without a doubt, was during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. It was for the MDC to implement the democratic reforms. They failed to implement even one token reform in 5 years of the GNU. It is a pity that most Zimbabweans out there, even today, have failed to understand that the GNU of 2008 to 2013 was the golden opportunity for Zimbabwe to implement the reforms and end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. Whether they understood it or not, doesn't matter. The fact still remains that the opposition sold out. They failed to implement even one reform during that GNU. And ever since the GNU debacle, the opposition have participated in flawed elections out of greed. But I think for them to have participated in these flawed elections out of greed and to go on and take their seats when SADC and the AU are saying these elections are flawed and they've produced a legitimate government, will, in my view, will be going too far. There is absolutely no excuse for our corrupt and incompetent opposition to cross the line that has been drawn by SADC and the AU and try to to side with ZANU-PF out of greed. These are going to be tough times ahead. And I think those tough times, if we're ever going to emerge out of these days stronger than when we went in, we have to be smart. And the smart move at the moment is for the opposition to stop selling out. The nation is not going to tolerate the opposition's antics. In the past, they boycotted the opening of parliament. But they've taken their seats and given the regime legitimacy. This time, they should not even attend parliament. They should not take their seats in council, in the local authorities. Zimbabwe does not have a legitimate government. After 43 years of rigged elections, this is what it has come down to now, where the regime is defying the international community, the African Union, and now our own regional body, SADC. To defy and deny the people of Zimbabwe a meaningful say in who governs the country for the simple, selfish purpose of staying in power, no matter what. This is the problem we must solve. We have kicked the can down the road for the last 43 years. This is a problem we must now resolve. And we are not going to shy away from it. We must face it head on. We do not have a legitimate government in Zimbabwe as of today. The swearing in of Mnangagwa is of no consequence at all. The only legitimate government must come out of the democratic wishes of the people of Zimbabwe in a free, fair, and credible election. The 23rd August election was not free, fair, and credible. And that is something that not only SADC have said it, the AU have said it. All the other election observers who were on the ground, they've confirmed the same thing. They were only confirming something that we Zimbabweans have known all along. And we've turned a blind eye to it. Well, now we are paying the price for it. This crisis could have been avoided, easily avoided, if MDC guys had implemented the reforms during the GNU. In fact, even that could have been avoided if ZANU-PF had, from 1980, decided to allow the people of Zimbabwe to have a meaningful say in the governance of the country and never rig the elections. We need to resolve this case of rigged elections. We are in a crisis. We must face the crisis, but we are not going to solve it by pretending that we've got a legitimate government in Harare. We don't. Mnangagwa can pretend all he likes, but the truth of the matter is, he is illegitimate. We need a legitimate government in Zimbabwe. We need to hold free, fair, and credible elections in Zimbabwe and get out of this cycle of rigged elections and bad governance. We have got a crisis. We know what the crisis is about. We know what caused the crisis. And we know what the solution is. The solution is to acknowledge, publicly acknowledge, that we do not have a legitimate government in Harare. And we hope that SADC leaders will stand up and be counted. And so far, thank God, they've stood up to be counted. Many of them did not attend this inauguration because they know that this is illegitimate. The African Union, many of the African Union leaders did not attend this process because they also know that this regime is illegitimate. Africa right now is facing one crisis after another. And I think one of the main reasons why we've had this endless cycle of crisis, wars, coups, failed states, and so forth, is because we failed to uphold the rule of law. And this is another opportunity. This is one example where the world is watching. What is the AU going to do about ZANU-PF imposing itself on the people of Zimbabwe? What is SADC going to do about ZANU-PF imposing itself on the people of Zimbabwe? And what are Zimbabweans ourselves going to do now that we have got an illegitimate government, an illegitimate president in State House? We are in a crisis. We should not shy away from it.
This is the moment we've been waiting for Zimbabwe. President-elect is now being inaugurated. The moment everyone is waiting for.
And there is nothing to be achieved by pretending that we don't have a crisis. We have a crisis. I wish I could see the future. How is this going to end? I don't know. But like all crises, we have got to remain focused on what we want. We did not cause this crisis, but for hell's sake, we must clearly define what is it we want out of this. I think what we want out of it is the return to legitimacy. Mnangagwa should do the honorable thing and accept that the 2013 and 2023 elections were not free, fair, and credible. And therefore, then we must have an interim government, one that can finally implement the democratic reforms that the 2008 to 2013 GNU should have implemented and failed to do so. That is the only way out of this mess. And we are not going to fudge it. We are not going to pretend that we have got a legitimate government in Harare. We don't. And we stand on the side with SADC and the AU in demanding that this ZANU-PF regime should not hold the whole nation to ransom. the elections were not free, fair, and credible. That is the reality that they cannot deny. We want a way out of this mess. At the present moment, we do not have a legitimate government in Harare. That is the truth. And we are not going to pretend that we have. We don't. Like I said, we know what the solution is, and we are determined to get it. Zimbabwe must get out of this cycle of rigged elections and bad governance. After 43 years with the country up to its eyeballs in this economic crisis, I think the region itself is realizing that this crisis in Zimbabwe is not going to go away, cannot be wished away. And they have made their first move by saying this election was not free, fair, and credible. And we, the people of Zimbabwe, have got to admit it to ourselves that the elections were not free, fair, and credible, and seek a way out and not hide ourselves or bury our heads in the sand and pretend everything is going to be okay. No, it's not. This is the first day of an uncertain future ahead. This is a dark day for Zimbabwe. How it's going to end will depend on how focused we are in facing the reality and how resolute we are in seeking a solution to it. Pretending that we don't have a problem is not solving the problem at all. That's my message to this. It's a sad day. It's a tragic day for Zimbabwe. I don't know how it's going to end. I hope that Mnangagwa gets the message and that the country is allowed to move on and not be held to ransom by a few. This is a crisis that we would have easily avoided. But we are where we are. Let's find a solution. Let's work it out. Let's not pretend that the problem is not there. Let's find the solution to the problem. Thank you and good day.